Well, we welcome you back to the International GT Open Championship ahead of round 5 here at Paul Ricard in the south of France. We arrive here now at, well, coming into the second half of the season with 4 rounds to take us through to the checkered flag for the 2025 campaign. 26 degrees in the air with 49% humidity. The track started to warm up as well after an early smattering of rain that has taken us through the morning, but now we're getting set and underway ahead of qualifying to kick us off for this French weekend. Coming out first, of course, we'll have the Christian Korzeniowski Olymp Racing Ferrari that went fastest in free practice during FP2. Prior to that, though, we've got Axel Jeffries returning to the series alongside Qualy Larka for Into Africa Racing by Dragon. They went fastest in FP1 with a 2:02.067, and Steve Jans and Aaron Walker fastest in FP3 for Get Speed Mercedes with a 2:02.742. Not the fastest lap of the weekend so far, though. That, of course, did go to Axel Jeffries, who, like we said, marks a return to the series. The fans now packing into the grandstands as they look to await and watch on as the GT cars now thoroughfare their way out. And, of course, in terms of the championship, we've got to talk about what's going on up at the top, because it's Christopher Haase and Simon Riker in what was described by Christopher Haase and Simon Riker as one of their greatest performances in the International GT Open last time out. They now arrive into this round top of the championship on 87 points and currently 4 ahead of Levente Reves, who was holding the championship lead for a great period of time leading through towards Budapest, but came out of Budapest in 2nd place. That can all change, though, this weekend. A huge hurdle for Iselin to cross this time around, because they've got 20 seconds to serve in the pit stop handicap after some major success recently over the last 4 races. George Morgan here in the commentary box. Alongside me once again is Chris Stevens.
Hello, George. And yes, things have certainly shifted around, haven't they, since we left in Budapest. New championship leaders and new GT3 machinery that has been unveiled in the weeks since then as well. Lamborghini pulling the wraps off of the Temerario GT3 and their new twin-turbo V8 powered machine with all sorts of changes under the hood. It might look quite similar on the skin, but trust me, there is an awful lot of work that has gone underneath that, and we look forward to seeing that car out in 2026. Of course, Porsche has also very heavily hinted that the 992.2 will be debuting next year as well across GT competition. Of course, the Ferrari 296 Evo package that was revealed a few weeks ago, and I'm sure AF Corsa have got their eyes on that as well. Big weekend for AF Corsa. Carl Bennett and Tommaso Mosca picking up their first podium of the season last time out in Budapest, and the big boss, Mr. AF Amato Ferrari himself, is going to be here this weekend.
Yeah, obviously representing the AF Corsa team, team boss, of course, for the legendary team in the realm of GT and also in the realms of sports car racing as a whole. Alfredo Hernandez back for BDR Grupo Prom as well, making his way down the straight in the AM class, of course, in the familiar 77 golden livery. It's gleaming in the French heat that we have here this weekend. Of course, it does get very warm here in the south of France, one of the hottest tracks you're going to witness on the calendar. And we have been at this track as well 12 occasions in the past, folks. All the way back in 2012 was the first time we raced here in the International GT Open with Alvaro Barber and also Matteo Malicelli taking the victory in the first ever race we ran here in France with Vouloir Racing. Of course, prior to Paul Ricard, we did race at Magny-Cours on the run-up to 2012, and also Andrea Montemini winning the first, or one of the first races that we had on the first weekend, I should say, for Scuderia Villorba, and alongside Juan Manuel Lopez. Of course, a long time, or should we say a lengthy period of time has passed since 2012, and we're now looking to the future. But if we look at some of the drivers that are on this rostrum, of course, many of them have been winners in the past, including the likes of Vincent Abril, who won last season's the ISR Audi, takes an aggressive line against the 51 that is, of course, being driven by Tommaso Mosca, if I'm not mistaken, and heading through
Carl Bennett.
Carl Bennett, apologies. Yeah, of course, there'll be roles reversed when qualifying 2 gets underway tomorrow. But Christopher Haase and Simon Riker also winners here last year as well, Chris. Last season, race 1. And not to mention the year before, Oregon have had their own fair share of success, when Pierre-Louis Chauvet and Max Paul won race 2 back in 2023. But altogether, Haase and Riker still a very formidable force.
And it's Simon Riker qualifying the car this morning. We've got some pretty big contenders out there in this session. Fabian Schiller and Maxi Goertz, to name but two, in their respective Mercedes from Get Speed and Motor Park. Remember, Goertz is driving the car from Motor Park that Levente Reves is contesting in the championship, or fighting for the championship in. Other contenders we should maybe look out for: the SBS Mercedes of Dominic Baumann, number 20 machine. Of course, can't count out the Ferraris around here. It might have a Italian prancing horse badge on the front of it, but this is something of a home race for the Ferrari 296, because they are, of course, built and prepared by Orica, which are based just down the road in Scene.
And of course, we have Scene Corner here at
yes, we do, named after that very town. So Polcini, first person to put a competitive time in, a 2:02.3. Which is still a little off the way, a few tenths off of what we've seen in free practice. So, of course, you mentioned the fact that the Dragon run Ferrari with Axel Jeffries in it was fastest in FP1, but of course they would have had a fresh set of tyres, I believe, for that session, because normally using a carryover set from the previous round, but this is their first appearance of the season, so unless they were using a set from another championship, although I don't believe...
I doubt they would.
You'd have to find another championship that runs the S9M.
Yeah.
So, from Michelin. So I believe that would have been a new set of tyres for them. So, Polcini continuing to push out there. Karel Basch has just gone fastest, and that's lap ruined for Polcini. It was fastest. A personal best in the first sector for Polcini, but that would have been compromised a little bit by trying to get around the Mark Sansom McLaren in the championship leading car in the AM category from Garage 59. So Basch is on an improvement as well. Can't ever count him out. He has always been a contender for overall pole positions in the sessions that he has been in. Got a bumpy trip over the curbing there on the exit of Le Bousset, and I think Polcini has now properly backed out of it. And Polcini, after what was initially a wildcard appearance in Budapest, sticking around for a little bit longer and trying to get Oregon back onto the right path after what has been a very, very difficult season for the Pirate team.
Obviously a bit of a contrast to 2022, but that being said, this very round was a bogey round, really, for the Oregon team back in 2022. Of course, Polcini at the wheel that season on quest for his championship, crossing the line, losing a lot of time in the final sector due to, obviously, the venture over the rumble and also a little bit of traffic as well. Karel Basch, though, coming through the final corner at the Pont, and 2 tenths up coming out of the second sector, so this could yet firmly increase his gap at the top of the classification as he now crosses the line, as he now storms through, but of course forfeiting quite a bit of time in the final sector, obviously getting a bit of a tricky run as Zach Meakin moves into 6th fastest ahead of Steve Jans. Carl Bennett now down in 8th with Malotta in P9 as Anton Dokan now moves into 3rd fastest. Fabian Schiller into P12 for Get Speed Mercedes. Dokan now reduced to 4th as now Simon Riker moves into 3rd fastest. Just alluding back to Polcini, of course, the 2022 season was a huge venture, or a huge visit here for Optimum, where, of course, we witnessed Nick Moss and Joe Osborne go back-to-back, winning both races here at Paul Ricard through the course of that weekend. And if I'm not mistaken, that is the only time that has ever happened here at Paul Ricard, here in the International GT Open. Of course, Emil Frey Racing historically have also won back-to-back races, but that was with 2 different lineups, with Giacomo Alto and also Albert Costa, and also Michael Grenier in the following race with Norbert Siedler. Optimum Motorsport have a stellar record around this, going 3 in a row in 2022 and 2023, taking the 2 wins in 2022, winning both races, and then winning race 1 back in 2023 with Sam Dehaan and Charlie Fagg. So they are the form players. Dominic Baumann purple in the middle sector, Fabian Schiller purple in the first with a mountainous over 5 1/4 tenths of a second improvement. Lost a little bit of time in the middle sector, but is still fastest overall out on track. So not a bad visit here for the the German driver, as now we watch as the number 9 now pirouettes its way around in a striking new livery for the Bartone-Schiller combination. Now all dressed in silver with the skull and crossbones very pronounced on the side of the car as he now looks to try and register his fastest time. Obviously, Max Gertz currently first fastest at the moment after setting a 2:01.665. Carol Bash reduced to second off the back of that. Polcini remains third. Baumann moves into fourth fastest. James Kell now moving into fifth. But now Schiller looking to usher his name higher up the order this time. And obviously land a first major blow in qualifying this weekend. 14:45 left to go in the session. Schiller looking to send a message. Zach Meekin moves into 10th fastest, and Schiller rises to the top as well, ahead of Maxi Gertz. So it is now 2 Mercedes inside the top 2.
Now, I was asking about the livery on this car, and I think it was silver at some point earlier in the year, but I don't remember the shark teeth on the front of it being there either. And they are back to their normal chassis. Last time they were racing the GT World Challenge chassis, I think, and nope, sorry, it was the other way around. But obviously with the turnaround around the Spa 24 Hours as well, they've been swapping chassis between the rounds here in GT Open, but back to their
they did have
regular one.
They did have quite a technical failure, didn't they, at Spa?
Quite a few Mercedes did that weekend.
Yeah, they certainly did.
And the one before that as well, just the other side of the border in Nürburgring.
I think if I remember rightly, Bartone's Mercedes was in the pit lane, and I think there was a little bit of fire protruding out of the back end as well. So they had, I think it was quite a glaring issue. There was a lot of smoke, should we say, coming out of the back end. So obviously some kind of terminal powertrain engine damage of sorts. So yeah, obviously a different car this weekend, so hopefully the same thing shouldn't occur this time at Paul Ricard.
Tom Leben has split the 2 Mercs, but we've got a spin for Mark Samson, and that looks like it could be down at Le Bousset. Second fastest of the AM runners at the moment is Samson, but just trying to get some forward drive there. And the good thing about Paul Ricard is that there are many hectares of
runoff
area that can be utilised, accommodating 247 different layouts of this circuit. So here's Lebon then. Was pole position last time out in Budapest. A fantastic and big breakthrough weekend for Elite Motorsport. First pole position and first race win in GT3 competition. Same for the 2 Toms there as well. Tom Empson who shares the car with Tom Lebon. Comes Fabi Schiller again after going fastest in the middle sector, but again losing quite a bit of time in the end of the lap there, so presumably came across some traffic, or if there were some yellow flags out potentially, that will have compromised him. So now we have to go again. And good news is from Mercedes that in amongst all of the new cars that are coming next year, this AMG Mercedes will be sticking around for another couple of years, we understand, before they introduce the new car with the smaller turbocharged V8 engine, so we can hear the Brutus V8 engine, as now we hear the turbocharged V6 of the Ferrari 296. The Orica built machine with Carl Bennett at the wheel, currently 12th fastest overall. And as we mentioned, it was a first podium for Carl Bennett and Tommaso Mosca, and it was Ugo on the radio to Carl at the end of that race. Now we see the dragon.
He was not wrong. Brilliant to see. Obviously, Carl Bennett now making his way through the final corners. Obviously, it's hard to believe, really, that this combination, doing just recently celebrated that first podium. You would have thought that it would have happened a lot sooner, certainly considering the talents that these 2 gentlemen possess. So now we watch as Carl Bennett now makes his way down through towards turn 1. And we'll look to go again. At the moment, Fabian Schiller untouched right at the top. Currently, that Get Speed Mercedes, or the Bartone brothers Mercedes, taking a bite out of the rest of the field with that aggressive, sharp teeth front end, with 3/10 between him and Tom Leben. And you're absolutely right, Chris. What a breakthrough weekend it was for Elite Motorsport Ferrari. And I have to say, Tom Leben, Tom Empson as a duo, obviously weren't together during the GT4 European Series the year prior. Of course, it was Josh Rattigan that Tom Leben celebrated winning the championship with that campaign after lifting the championship trophy aloft, and obviously still taking part in that series was obviously Tom Emson, but they've really risen to the occasion now. And obviously Elite Motorsport not planning a massive GT3 program. This is the one car they're going to adopt. So Tom Leben and Tom Emson very much flying the flag for Elite as a whole in their GT3, should we say, involvement in the sport. So credit to them, and they're doing it very well against, you know, some established and very well, you know, well-run GT3 racing teams, and that's always difficult to do, but they're very much proving that they belong.
4 cars in Pro-Am have got their Pro aboard at the moment. Those are the 4 you'll see towards the front end of the overall order. So that's Carol Bash, Dominic Baumann, Steve Yant. Oh, sorry, no, excuse me, sorry. I hadn't even noticed Steve Yantz is actually ahead of Lucas Dunner. So 3 of those guys have got the Pro in, and one of the AMs, very rapid AM, don't get me wrong, is actually ahead of one of the pros at the moment. So Steve Yantz, he was quickest in the bronze test.
He was.
Yesterday, but 3rd in Pro-Am at the moment. That is fantastic stuff for the car that is leading the Pro-Am Championship going into this weekend.
And it was only 7/10 off the best time that Axel Jeffries posted in first free practice. So, and if that was done on fresh tyres for Axel Jeffries, which we believe to, you know, think that it was, then that's even more impressive on part of Steve Yans, that, you know, 7/10 was the gap.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well, Lucas Dunner, a new teammate for him this weekend. No Heiko Neumann for this round, and so it is the Motorpark team boss, Timo Rumpfkarl, who has dug his helmet and overalls out from the storage facility. And
couldn't stay away for too much longer.
Yeah, had to, hopefully didn't have too much trouble doing up the zip after a few weeks away from the car. In fairness, he was racing at Road to Le Mans, wasn't he, as well? So he's not completely green.
All we need now is Adam Osaka to step in at Get Speed, and we'll have a full
we
house.
need to have that team boss battle back, don't we, in the AM Championship. We enjoyed that thoroughly last year.
And speaking of which, big shout out to Kiki Saknana. I hope you're keeping well out there. I'm sure we'll see him back soon in the series. I know he was a big fan of the championship, has been taking part over many years. Let's take a look at the 33 here of James Kell. Now, if you want to talk about fortune, unfortunately for this team, they've had the most misfortune I think we have seen in the GT Open so far this season. Arguably should have dominated the Spa Enduro that we did, of course, the Spa 500 earlier this season, where they led all the way after a truly spirited performance in qualifying that lifted them to the front end, starting on pole position, and it just all ebbed and flowed away after the power trouble. Looks like James Kell bringing the car to a bit of a slowdown here at this point, obviously. Perhaps looking to come into the pits and joining the likes of Schiller, Leben. No, he's going to stay out and make his way around Pont. But yes, it has been a very tricky first half of the season for Greystone. Arguably should be your championship leaders.
I mean, they were the favourites at the beginning of the season, and they certainly looked that way in the first meeting of the campaign as well. But, oh no, look at that. Hash coming out of pit lane right in front of the James Kell car. Now, there is a warning to the drivers on the start and finish straight, saying there's a car coming out of pit lane. Subsequently, there is a warning to the cars exiting the pit lane about cars coming down the front straight at full chat as well. So I'm sure that would have compromised the start of this lap for James Kell, and indeed it is not a personal improvement by quite some margin there for Kell in the end. So I'll have to regroup and go again. Heading down the Mistral, bit of tyre warming there for Tom Lebon, building up to his final attempt. So we've got Schiller back out onto the racetrack, as well as Carol Bash. Looks like it could be between those 4 for the overall pole position, but hard to look away from Schiller, Lebon and Gertz at the moment. The Ferrari running particularly well here this weekend, as well as the Mercedes, helped by the fact that 2 of those drivers are some of the most experienced drivers in that machine.
Tom Leben as well, very experienced around. Paul Ricard himself, obviously racing here in single-seaters with the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, and now can use some of that experience that he has, of course, had in the past, and here in a GT3 setting. And this is going to be quite an intriguing I suppose, situation now for Tom Leben, Tom Empson, and Elite Motorsport. Obviously, having had that breakthrough win at Hungaroring, is that the cork out of the bottle, so to speak? Are we now going to expect to see Elite Motorsport continuing to pepper their way up at the front end? Currently second fastest as it stands. Obviously, no personal improvements at the moment on that previous run, just getting the tyres up to temperature, ready for a fast run. I'd expect to see them now ushering in some really quick times in this final 5 minutes.
And just before those times do go in, it's worth reminding everyone, if you haven't seen the news, our 2026 calendar has been announced. We'll be kicking off next season in Portimao once again on the 18th of April. The Spa and Monza 500-kilometre races are returning, but new for next year, we'll be heading to Misano for the third round of the season on the 6th and 7th of June. So we're very much looking forward to adding, a second Italian venue, and also a new venue for GT Open there as well. And we'll be returning to the Hungaroring here in Paul Ricard, Hockenheim later in the season in September, and rounding out the season in Barcelona for the traditional end of the GT Sport organisation season in October next year. So we're very much looking forward to that. So be sure to mark your calendars early as Leonardo Polcini moves up to fourth fastest there in the Oregon Lamborghini.
Yeah, ahead of Karel Bash now, Anton Dokan, of course, fellow Oregon team Lamborghini driver, now sixth fastest as well, ahead of Dominic Baumann. So the Oregon's now starting to converge further up, and this will, I'm sure, put a smile on Jerry Cannaviccio and Pier Giorgio Testa's face in a season that really has not been their very best. And obviously just looking to try and muscle in some really improved points. If you want to take a look at the championship, Oregon do not feature inside the top 10 at all with any driver so far, so they're really looking to turn this around. It's a personal best in the first sector for Karel Bash, as he now looks to improve from fifth fastest as well, highest in Pro-Am, of course, and also elsewhere, Anton Dokan finding more time in that first sector, currently approximately 23 thousandths off the improvement that Karel Bash posted in the first sector. Dokan is fastest in the speed trap at the moment as James Kell goes 8th fastest. Karel Bash now coming through Bousset this time around, closely being pursued by Anton Dokan, who now looks to open up the throttle on this 63 Oregon team Lamborghini. Steve Yans now 8th as Meakin drops to 10th with Dunner in the pits at the moment. It's now the treble 7 Audi looks to spirit its way through and then in towards the final sector.
This is a marked improvement from Oregon. Both cars inside the top 10, well, inside the top 6.
Top 6 at the moment.
And Polcini much closer to the front, only 4 tenths away as it stands. So let's see what this lap will do for Karel Bash. 2 personal improvements in the first 2 sectors, and those 2 V10 cars blast their way up, and it's 3rd overall for Bash. He demotes Maxi Goertz, but the Mercedes factory driver is on an improvement on this lap himself as well. No improvements so far from Fabi Schiller or Tom Lebon, though. Look at that. Actually, in fact, Karel Bash has done an identical time to the 1,000
matching,
as Tom Lebon.
Does that
Both
mean
of them 97 thousandths away.
Does that make it also 7th fastest? Carl Bennett's moved up to 11th, so displaces Kellen Riker further down. Of course, Simon Riker looking to return Easterland to the top step, along with Christopher Arce, like they were last season, having taken a victory in race 1 last year. They'll be looking to replicate the same thing again in the final couple of minutes or so, maybe to enlist themselves higher up the order. Tom Leben not far off Schiller's fastest time so far, 32 thousandths now away, and purple in that middle sector. Schiller's gone purple, though, in the first, so strap yourselves in, folks. This is going to be a very fiery final 1 minute and a half, as now we see them come through the final sector. There is Tom Leben now chasing after James Kells. Greystone GT as they look to post the final times of the session. Of course, they will still have one more run here, Early Motorsport, after they post this one. The question is, how good was that final sector? Is it enough? Goertz goes to the top now, fastest ahead by 44 thousandths. Leben splits the two of them and goes 23 thousandths away from Maxi Goertz, with Schiller, who is currently purple in the first sector as well, looking to post an improvement. Not a personal best in the middle sector. Dominic Baumann, however, purple now on this very lap, looking to storm to the front of the order in his own Mercedes. No, not an improvement in the final sector. Well, it was an improvement in terms of a personal best, but but loses time in terms of the overall fastest lap, and therefore goes second in Pro-Am, 5th fastest overall. It is Maxi Goertz at the moment at the head of the order, but now all eyes on Fabian Schiller. Still purple on this lap at the moment, and look at how far up he is, over 3.5 tenths up on top of Maxi Goertz's time, and Goertz has also put in a personal best in the first sector. Here comes Fabian Schiller to send a chill up the spine with a gaping mouth on the front of that Mercedes-AMG GT3 as he pirouettes to the top, and nearly a whole 6 tenths quicker than Goertz in second place.
But Goertz is responding on this one. Personal best in the first sector and a personal best in the middle sector as well. He's only a 1/10 of a second away. The checkered flag is out then, and so it's battle on between the two Mercedes factory drivers. Goertz drives up towards the line. Is this going to be good enough for him? Well, I think we're on board with a different car. There we go. Goertz was going through the middle sector. And so, right, we've got a little bit longer to see where Goertz is going to come out. Schiller's going quicker still, though, in the first sector. Unbelievable. So he's done another personal best, well, fastest of anybody, as Goertz had to weave his way through the traffic a little bit. Has that compromised him on this run? We'll see as he goes up towards the timing line now. And let's see where this puts Maxi Goertz. Checkered flag is out. It's only second fastest, 3/10 of a second away from Fabi Schiller in the end. James Kell there moves up to 7th position. Tom Lebon, having fought for pole position a minute ago, now down in 6th place. But look at Fabi Schiller flying through Scene Corner. It is another personal best in the middle sector so far.
This is insult to injury at this point, Chris. 32.768 coming out of the first sector is a 36.817, matching exactly the same middle sector time with Maxi Goertz. Of course, Goertz doing a 36.817 on the last lap, Schiller doing the same, and is already again a 1/10 and 3/4 up on his previous best that ushered his way to the top ahead of Goertz and Bash. Polcini has moved up to 4th fastest as well. Baumann in the pits. He's going to finish 5th fastest as it stands. Tom Levin in 6th as well. Dorbecker moving into 15th place, but all eyes again on Schiller as he looks to punch away and cement their position on pole ahead of the race coming up this afternoon, and it's an almighty improvement of over 4.5 tenths. Fabian Schiller now on top and is the only driver to cement in place at 2.0 in this qualifying session. Everyone else 2.1 or 2.01 or more.
Amazing stuff between Schiller and Goertz there right at the end of qualifying. Clear of the rest of the field as well by about 1/4 of a second. Carol Bash, top of the Pro-Am runners, but well done to Oregon. 4th fastest for them, and well, big shout out to Steve Yance as well, top bronze driver in the session.
Performance from Steve Yance.
10th overall, incredible stuff, and Mark Sansom taking the AM pole position as well there.
Yeah, let's run you through the final classification. It is pole position for Fabian Schiller and also Anthony Bartone as well, and that's the second time they've achieved that this season. Maximilian Goertz in 2nd place with Carol Bash in 3rd. Leonardo Polcini, Oregon back to their prior best with Polcini back in the wheel. And then we have, of course, Dominic Baumann in 5th. Great performance again from Tom Leben. Of course, James Kell inside the top 10, P7. Simon Riker, of course, race winner here last season, P8. We also have further down Carl Bennett and Steve Yans, a great performance. Anton Dokan, 11th. Then comes Zach Meakin, Lucas Dunner as well further down. Libor Milotta, 14th. Lewis Michael Dorbecker, 15th. Michael Blanchimont also down in 16th place. Dexter Muller, 17th. Mark Sampson in 18th and highest am, ahead of Marcello Ramirez and Hash down in P20. We also have Johannes Zelger in 21st. Amir Naran in 22nd, ahead of Gino Forgione. Swalil Letlaka down in 24th, with Alfredo Hernandez in 25th. Then we have Theofolda Guzrasen in 26 for Team Tour, and of course Stanislav Jedlinski at the rear. So there we have it. Very exciting qualifying session. Obviously to kick off the Paul Ricard weekend. A very spicy ending. Obviously with Schiller going 1st fastest ahead of Maxi Goertz. It was a true, well, a real corker of a session. I know I've just been looking at the timing screen. I think there's been a deletion because Goertz is currently first fastest.
Schiller's had his time deleted. He's been demoted to third. So suddenly it's Maxi Goertz who has inherited the pole position here.
So it's no longer 2 pole positions for Fabian Schiller. The baton has gone to Max Goertz, who has now taken his first pole position of the season. Congratulations to him and the Motor Park team. Of course, Levente Reves coming into this round second in the championship, and this gives him a great opportunity now to punch back ahead of Christopher Haase and Simon RICARD. But of course, that will all be decided in race trim later on this afternoon. Max Goertz celebrating, obviously delighted with that performance. We welcome him back again to the International GT Open, and what a display from him, and a great performance as well for Karel Basch, who is parked up just behind him in Parc Fermé. But for Motor Park, this again throws them back into the, shall we say, back on track for the championship lead in terms of the driver standings with Levente Reves. And
returning the serve now, aren't they?
Yeah, it's exactly the response you want to post after what was a very phenomenal weekend for Easter Lent racing back at Hungaroring.
Second pole for you.
So now let's run you through the top 3. Coming off the back of this, P3 for Fabian Schiller, who unfortunately had his time deleted, was originally first fastest. We also have Karel Basch second. Great performance again from Karel, the pole back in second place. We also have Max Goertz, though, who has taken a phenomenal pole position after the time was deleted for Fabian Schiller. Goertz is standing by with Alfredo for an interview.
Maxi Goertz on pole for race 1 at Paul Ricard. Good position.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was not expecting it, to be honest, because my engineer said, you are P2, you are P2. But then, I guess Fabi got cancelled his lap time because of track limits, maybe. So it's always hard to judge where you are and which position you are. And the gap was quite big, so 5/10 to Fabi, which was for me a bit too much. And then on the in-lap, the engineer said, you are on pole. Fabi got a lap time cancelled, so in the end, super happy. Car was great. I mean, it's always a compromise here between fast corners and low-speed corners. We suffered a bit on understeer, but in the end, super happy. I think that's a good starting position to this afternoon race. We are still in the fight, or like Levente is still in the fight for the championship. So I think it's a good position to start with, to take all the points today, and then let's see what the weekend brings to us.
Great fight at the end of the session. The conditions are changing. How you play with this?
I'm fully trusting my team. They say there is no rain expected, so we wait, we keep cool, and in the end we went out and 2 flying laps in the end, so it was tight in the timing, but it was perfect, organized from the team. Also, I had a great gap, which is important here to have a clear lap, so everything perfect, and to being on pole, it's always nice.
Well done, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Well done.
So we're going to have sunshine in southern France, and it was track limits at turn 1 that meant that Schiller forfeited the pole. But we'll see how Goertz gets on. Join us live this afternoon ahead of the race.